Okay, you're on.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, our Tuesday webinars. I'm really excited to have everybody here. So the first Tuesday of the month, we always have our Gender and Sexuality Committee meeting. And so I'm really excited to have folks here. And we have three very special guests that we're going to be having a very nice, intimate community conversation. And, you know, I say community conversation because we want it to be, you know, down to earth. We are flowing the way we flow. If we, you know, stop in the middle of it to talk and change our minds about what we want to talk about, we're going to do that. But I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of the folks that we have that have joined us today. We have Saifa, if you let folks know, and Sunshine. And then we also have Umi. So we're going to kind of get started right away. I wanted to jump in with just introductions so that folks can kind of let us know who they are. So I was going to start by speaking with Saifa. The question basically is, who are you? How do you identify? Do you represent an organization? It's a little deep, so hang out a little bit more. Tell us how you spend your time outside of organizing. I think sometimes when we get into these organizing spaces, we're always like, what do you organize? What are you fighting? What are you doing? But like, are you working on any personal projects? Like, what do you do? How are you making it through this pandemic that we're in? So like, what do you do?
Oof, oof. Yo, all the things, all the things. If I miss any of your questions, please let me know. So hello, everyone. My name is Saifa. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I am co-founder of the Intersex Justice Project, which is a grassroots kind of collective structure that seeks to end medically unnecessary surgeries on intersex infants and children in the United States. And let me see. Oh, you asked so many good questions. Did I miss a couple? Am I hitting them?
Yeah. What do you do? What else do you do outside of all your organizing? How are you, you know, making your way through this pandemic?
Yeah, I do research. I'm also a visual artist. And yeah, you know, if I'm honest, like the beginning of COVID was really hard. But I think I'm making it through with the, you know, support of my homies and my loved ones. And yeah, I mean, that's the only way you can make it these days with your folks.
Do you mind me asking a little bit of what kind of visual art do you do? I'm always, you know, we're such creative people, and I'm always just wondering, you know, what other kinds of things that we're doing.
Yeah, I think I'm on hiatus from collage art. I'm also a documentarian, but I'm also working on this really cool project with a disabled artist, a queer disabled artist in Chicago. Her name is Reva Lehrer. And the project is called Returning the Gaze. And it's basically a nude portrait of me. And basically it's a sort of conversation about how the medical establishment has often exploited Black intersex people to prove the existence of what they considered at the time hermaphrodites. And just in the medical literature, there's a lot of, whenever you see intersex bodies, it's often you see like the black bars over their eyes and this nude photos. And they really take away the dignity of intersex people. And so this portrait is a way of like really looking and confronting the medical establishment's sort of practice of harming intersex people, as well as, you know, exploiting and harming Black intersex people.
Wow, we're going to come back to that most definitely, because I think there's part of what the coalition is really uncovering in having the Gender and Sexuality Committee is really looking at how policing and violence intersect with gender and sexuality, but being a nurse, how also the medical industrial complex is part and parcel of that. So that sounds absolutely amazing, and definitely going to come back to that and hear more about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna go on to Sunshine. Sunshine, how are you doing? I'll also want to ask you the same questions. Who are you? How do you identify? How do you spend your time? Are you associated to an organization? And how are you getting yourself through this pandemic as well?
So hi, very honored to be here, very honored to speak. I'm Sunshine, my pronouns are they, them. I am trans non-binary. Who do I organize with? Well, I just started working with Stop LAPD Spying Coalition and feel very honored to be in this space with y'all always. I also work with a queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, POC kink group where we throw play parties and kink education, like panels and stuff for QT BIPOC communities. So that's a lot of joy in my life. What's the next question?
Well, how are you getting through the pandemic and everything? We're definitely going through it. It's hot everywhere, and just wanted to know, how you're making it through.
Yeah, that is definitely hard. Every day it's something new, but I've been reading a lot. I've been trying to just find some time to give back to my community. I've been, especially for Pride Month, I did a lot of Black-centered, queer, trans, Black-centered dance parties, because I also dance. I'm a dancer and a filmmaker as well. Yeah, so trying to give back to my community, filming videos for sex workers and just different things have brought me joy during this time. It's been a very hard time, but honestly, Stop LAPD Spying Coalition has also helped me feel like I'm not in a rut of just constantly just saying the same thing for years and moving. I feel like this coalition has brought me solid foundations to move and to actually do things.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. A dancer and filmmaker. I did not know that. I know we've been working together for some time, but I had not known that about you. So I'm really happy that I asked that question, because sometimes we only see each other in the eyes of organizing, and we forget that we're these creative beings that have multiple frames and are capable of so many things besides just fighting power and, sticking it to people that need it stuck to.
I definitely try to organize through my, try to be an activist through my art, for sure.
And that is what really kind of brings a lot of the inspiration to the work. I know it keeps me going, the music, the art, because it's hard. It's hard out there, and it's especially, it's harder now, even so much more now. And the music and the art is something that really keeps us going. So thank you for being a contributor to that. I did not know that. That is super awesome. And I'm gonna go to Umi now. If you could also, I know I have a scroll of questions that I keep asking everybody, but who are you? How do you identify? And what, if you want to talk about your organization or personal projects you're involved in, and how are you doing?
Hi, everyone. It's really good to join you all from the Pacific Northwest, from Snohomish, Quinault, Multnomah, Siletz, First Nation lands. I'm originally from the areas of the Tongva people in Southeast LA. And I'm a descendant of immigrant parents, Indigenous people, Tepehuan, Ohlone people of northern areas, colonized regions of Mexico nations, and identities. Those are some of my identities as well. I feel I'm a spirit manifested in this lifetime. Many of my identities are surrounded by, made up by many people who have helped me politicize myself and identity. So I do identify as trans. I identify as a child of immigrant. I identify as an artist, as an abolitionist, as a gender binary abolitionist, as a I don't know, so many things. But yeah, I representing the organization of Familia, Trans Queer Liberation Movement. Really passionate about the work that they've been doing for 6 years now or so. I've been on staff for 2 years in the campaign and organizing team. And I like to do, outside of organizing, I really like dabbing into the occult, any kind of, tarot. I've been into tea making recently. I've really been enjoying that. I've been enjoying infusing my water with strawberries and all sorts of things that's been helpful. Staying hydrated. I'm not the best meditator, but it's been so tough lately that the beginning of COVID times brought me to whoa, chill. Like you have to breathe and practice slowing down because you are not going to go anywhere right now. And so I've been picking up on some attempts at pausing and having me breathing times that are pseudo meditative. They serve me as meditative practices for me. So yeah, I dabble into a few of those things. It's great to be on. Great to be with you all. Love what you all do.
Thank you. That's so, a couple things you said really resonated. I really appreciate what you said about our identities and how our identities actually become politicized and how important it is to have them politicized. And that's something that I recently, in the last 2 years, have started to, in my intersex identity, realize it was very much a political moment for me to say that I'm an intersex woman, that I am here and I'm intersex and there's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think being in these spaces with other queer PI folks has really allowed me to just embrace, but actually unlearn and kind of heal from a moment in my life that was very real and very much happened, that I had felt like I had no community around to share and to talk about and to dig up and to unearth and figure out what it all did to me, because I had no support in a sense. And now having, realizing that, being political being allows you to kind of almost find community that you didn't have. But the other thing you said that I thought was really amazing was kind of tapping into this kind of spiritual kind of space as well. And I think lately, as far away as we are, I think, and not being able to be close to each other because of the pandemic and the 6 feet and the masks, I've been noticing that I've been getting messages and channels in different ways, like feeling the connections in very different ways. And that conduit has been pretty phenomenal, and kind of trips me out a few times when, I realize I'm connecting with people from far away and I'm not even next to them or being able to touch them. So I really appreciate you bringing that up and reminding us how connected we are. So I'm going to pause right now, and I did forget Hamid because I got so excited to talk to our guests and to start this conversation, but I forgot that you also wanted to kind of, let everybody know why they're coming in on mute and kind of our safety protocols to keep each other safe. I don't like to think about it as policing. I think about it as keeping each other safe. So how do we keep each other safe on this Zoom?
Yeah, so hi everybody. So when you all joined in, you were muted, and the reason why you were muted is that it is in order to maintain the safety and sanctity of the space from Zoom bombing. It's interesting. We are getting some messages as well, but so in a sense, which you all won't see because they're coming to the chat room, and which the chat room is directly going only the host. So in a sense, that's why we are kind of just, if you want to send a message, if you want to, it's interesting. If you want to send a message, then please just send it to the chat. It'll go to myself and Jamie. Or if you want to, even if you're on the phone, and that's totally fine, I can give you my cell number. You can text me at 562-230-4578. That's a number to text any messages or anything that we can discuss. And that's basically it. So as much as folks may want to try, they won't be able to unmute themselves. And then we'll have to unmute them. And I think when we get down to the collective conversation, we'll try and do it then. So Andrew, I see your hand. And yeah, so we'll get to it when there's time. So right now, we're not going to be taking any questions right now. And if you have any question, you can just send us in this thing. So thank you. Thanks, Jamie.
All right, so let's keep the good vibes going because we got 3 really great panelists, and we're going to keep having this amazing conversation. And so I wanted to start the first question I asked about introductions. The second question, we're going to go ahead and have everybody ask, but I have a couple questions that are going to be just for each panelist. So the second question is, queer, trans, gender non-conforming, and intersex is a language regarding the queer community that I've been hearing more about. In some senses, I hear that, you know, with the inclusion of intersex, it's becoming more expansive, you know, including intersex identities. So I wanted to find out, what does that mean to each of you in your kind of understanding of the queer community, and what does it mean to you? How does that make you feel? So I'm gonna ask Saifa if you can lead us off, please. And then Hamid, can you unmute?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, in my experience, I feel like the queer community has given intersex people a platform to share our stories and to be heard. I don't feel like it's any coincidence that a lot of the early organizers under, it was Hermaphrodites with Attitude, that they were trans, that they were queer. I mean, it doesn't surprise me, because I feel like if you have, the more marginal identities you have, the more you just don't give a damn, you know, kind of like, you know, with Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, who were like trans women of color, who were sex workers, who had been arrested, who just really had nothing to lose, especially given that they had been previously terrorized by the police so many times, right? So I feel like, you know, I feel like the queer community has really given the intersex community a voice and a platform. But just like any other community, there are so many people who are intersex and who are straight, you know? And I feel like a lot of the more vocal intersex people are queer, and that makes sense in that own right. Just before I hand it off, I wanted to kind of throw out there, like, out of the UK, they're they call themselves gender critical activists. We know them as TERFs or SWERFs, some of whom are intersex and who are really transphobic. And that's really unfortunate. So yeah, I think that's just some of the really complicated dynamics that comes in when talking about like intersex and queerness. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm starting off.
Nice. Thank you. And I think that, you know, right now I kind of just want to set the stage, and I want it to be known right now that it's, you know, what's happening, even when we think about transphobia, when we think about folks who are not secure in their own sexuality, who are not secure in their own bodies, and who may even be present on the Zoom call right now, that we are not afraid, that we are holding our space right now, and that you will be kicked off this Zoom. So I want to make that very clear, because I am staying focused. I'm a little hot and I'm a little fire-like, but I just want it to be clear, because that's what we're dealing with. And I really appreciate that, Saifa, is the fact that I am an intersex, and I've been straight most of my life. And I've realized in that time how important it is that that politicized identity comes out, so that people start to understand that, like, sex and gender and sex organs have nothing to do with gender identity. And that was kind of like a calling that happened. And I really appreciate you kind of setting that stage. And I appreciate the idea that the queer community has set that stage for us, that it's important to say something, you know. And I wanted to give one example, was that when I was 16 and I decided the kind of body that I wanted, you know, I was able to have that moment where I could make that decision, where as I learned more and more about the intersex community, that moment was kind of taken from people. But I had the experience where I was able to choose. But the most terrifying component, or the most terrifying memory I have of that, is when my mother had to actually argue with the insurance and actually say, this is, and the insurance was saying, this is cosmetic. What she wants isn't medically necessary. It is a cosmetic procedure, so we are not going to approve of it. And what was so phenomenal at that time in the 90s was my parents were able to fight. And they fought and they fought for me to have the right to the body that I wanted, the body that I felt I needed. So I'm a little hot right now, but I know that we called in friends and we're getting this all under control right now. So I want folks to know if some of the stuff has been triggering right now, because it did trigger the hell out of me, that we're getting the Zoom under control right now. So I really appreciate everybody hanging in there and for us being strong in our power and being strong together right now. But if I could do anything, I would, but I'm sitting in Zoom and I'm like not able to, do those things that we want to do to keep each other safe, but we are keeping each other safe. And so I appreciate it.
That's okay. I mean, it's just like as they come, so we fight. So it's just like, so we fight back. So yeah.
Thank you everybody for coming on board too, and for keeping us safe and letting us keep having this conversation. So I'm going to turn to Sunshine. And Sunshine, I know I kind of getting myself regrounded because people get me hot and I get fiery, but we called in backup and we're doing well now. So again, I wanted to ask you the same question, and I wanted to ask you about, this kind of how queer TGI is being used more, and what does that mean to you, and how do you feel it's changed your experience as a trans non-binary person? How has it opened up your eyes, or has it opened up spaces even with your own friends that people have been actually able to be more vocal about who they are as well?
Hang on, let me unmute Sunshine. There you go. Go ahead and unmute Sunshine. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
I want to say I feel that fire. My phone got super hot, so I had it kicked me out of the call, but I was like, I'm getting fiery talking about this as well. Being in the queer community for a really, really, really long time, I've seen a lot of the language shifts and a lot of more broadening of the terms, because intersex people have always been around, gender non-conforming people have always been around, but the language that has been lacking has kind of kept these people outside of the queer community, even though we all mutually deal with, we're all outside of the cis heteronormative matrix. And there are, I really liked what Saifa said about there are intersex people who are straight, but they're still a part of the community, because there are also like binary trans people who are also straight, but they're still a part of the community. There are queers that are cis that are still a part of the community. I feel like once the community gets the language and learns what language this is and grasps who we're talking about, we're always just broadening and just loving. And it's a community. I can't speak for everyone, but I feel like it's definitely a community that's not a gatekeeping community. I can't speak for everyone's experience, but the people I have in my life and the people I've dealt with in the queer community and the trans GI community has been very open about that. And I really have actually had a few intersex friends come out more, because they would always say I feel like I could just fly under the radar, the cis radar. I could pass in these different spaces that I didn't really ever talk about what I was going through, because I just felt like I could pass. So why am I talking about this? So I think it's super, super important for us to broaden our community and to get everyone who is outside of this matrix in it.
Thank you, Sunshine. And Umi, I was going to come over to you as well, and to see how you wanted to share.
Thank you. I'm just so moved, and I feel like I've had several outer body experiences already, and just hearing you all speak in such awesome ways. I feel like I'm really happy to see our movements acknowledge leadership and center leadership and conversations of intersex individuals, gender non-conforming, and trans people. I think now, as true as always, intersex people, gender non-conforming people have, really have been providing so many lessons to our world about how heteronormativity is that social construct, and it's more of think I'll say this. I feel like intersex and gender nonconforming people are contributing a lot to our spiritual liberation. And so like I'm reminded of, even in my own ways of trying to connect with the Tepehuan Odami family, ancestry, and my parents' upbringing that they were forced to encourage to let go of. And coming into travel writings of French friars that got lost in the 1620s, one of the things that they've mentioned that seems to really have upset them and set them off is the fact that they couldn't tell people apart by genders. And in moments in this writings where they're acknowledging that there's many people of many different genders. And I think even in some of those writings where I've found that I'm interpreting from what I was reading is that, a French person who doesn't understand about being connected with the spiritual realm in the way that Tepehuan people were, and particularly gender variant people or intersex people or people that had roles to connect our physical lived experiences with that of the spiritual world. And so I imagine moments of them getting lost and or even being invited and welcomed because their humanity was also seen by our communities, and being invited to ceremonia and to have what we now know as communities with the English language and with Western language, when we use our politicized identities and stuff like that too. I think the intersex and gender nonconforming people that were in the roles of facilitating these ceremonias, these ceremonies, I think we were also, we're talking about engaging with powerful plants and connecting with the natural world in such powerful divine ways. Peyote ceremonies are no joke. They shine a light of a deep internal. And so the same goes to the moments where we sometimes do acknowledge the spearheading of trans queer liberation movements by Black and Brown, leaders of Stonewall, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera. I think the same goes for many moments, including that moment and in current time, and in times where many times where colonization has been continuously taking place throughout the Americas, the world, that we have had in ways, I feel like once we're able to uncover or see maybe little moments, whether it's some travel writing or something, I see patterns of intersex and gender nonconforming people contributing a lot to the world about how we're much more than our physical experience, and we're also connected with a divine spiritual experience as well. And so.
Thank you for that. Thank you. That was awesome and that was beautiful. And I think your background made me feel like, I don't know, it was very beautiful what you were saying. And yeah, so I'm going to go on to the next question. I think I'm finding myself kind of grounding again, and something to do that if folks are having trouble grounding and really wanting to make sure we're not getting distracted in conversation, I just switched my Zoom so that I'm actually just seeing the person who's speaking. And that was actually exceptionally beautiful for me, so that I didn't have to get distracted by any kind of pop-ups that are going on. And so I spent my last moment really just looking at you and listening to what you were saying, and it was immensely grounding. So I really appreciate that. So so thank you. So I'm going to turn to Saifa, and we're going to kind of open up this, the intersex identity and the intersex experience. So I wanted to, do some knowledge sharing right now and kind of spend a little time talking about it. And I wanted to, and I've started to kind of share myself, but I wanted to kind of hold space with you a little bit. And I wanted to not only learn, some things that I'm kind of slowly learning myself, but, allow us to kind of also share back our experiences. So, but one of the things I really wanted to dig up, which is so important when we think about the medical industrial complex, is I wanted to talk a little bit about John Money. And I think talking about John Money really allows us to start to see how forced gender identity really kind of mess with people, because the identity and the feeling is within. And like, for example, in my own experience, I knew very, very young and what I was feeling, that I felt very femme, that I was a woman. And though I was born with what they called MRKH syndrome, which is named after men, right? Meyer, Rokowski, Hauser syndrome, right? And that means that you're born without a vagina or a uterus. And of course, 4 men decided to name this to me. So what I'm trying to say is that, like, I started to learn that I'm not that I knew very much that I didn't need those things to feel femme, that I felt very femme, and that's what I was, and I didn't need a test. I didn't need, you know, a genetic testing to kind of identify that. So I wanted to see if you can, you know, throw some knowledge for us and tell us a little bit about John Money and the history of intersex. Not the complete history, but, you know, what do you feel?
Ooh, that would be a whole Zoom call unto itself.
Right?
Yeah, I think there's always been, you know, I think good books. I think one book that I refer to is like, you know, Bodies in Doubt by Elizabeth Rice. Because I think there's always been a fascination with people who are intersex, right? I think there's always been just even the etymology, like looking at the term hermaphrodite, right? Like the Greek people having an understanding of sort of sex, biological sex that can exist, 2 biological sexes that can exist in one body, right? Like the child of Hermes and Aphrodite. So I think there's always been like a fascination with people who are intersex, but I feel like through time, you know, especially because of colonization, because of Europeans, like intersex people pose a problem because their bodies weren't neatly categorized, right? Because the way I think about it, I think about intersex bodies being the norm, and we just have bodies that are more typical, like male bodies and female bodies that are more typical. Because I know I've slept with a considerable amount of people, and I know other people on this call, if you slept with different people, you'll know that bodies are different, right? And so I like to think we don't really know who's intersex and who's not, right? And I feel like the people who are targeted for the most harm are people who can be identified as intersex. So I feel like part of that thinking, that protocol was created by Dr. John Money, who was a sexologist, a sexual psychologist at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. Him and his protege, who's alive? Her name is Dr. Anka Earhart. She is at Columbia Hospital, Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, New York Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. Her and Dr. John Money wrote Man, Woman, Boy, Girl. I believe it was released in 1972. That established protocols for the treatment of intersex children, but would create some of the most harmful protocols for intersex children, because basically Dr. John Money was really obsessed with intersex people because he was creating this idea of like gender roles, right? Which was in and of itself pretty interesting, because before Dr. Money came along, people were either man or woman, right? But Dr. John Money came up with this idea of like gender, right? And he separated sex from gender. He was just like, just because you're born one way, that doesn't mean you, through nature and nurture, you can, you know, be reared in another gender, which is liberating for trans people. But Dr. Money hated trans people, right? And he tried to test this theory, and he tested this theory using intersex children, because he was just like, with these children growing up, how would they would be so confused about their bodies, right? He was really concerned, and his concern was not necessary and very harmful. So the thing about it is that laid the foundation for these harmful surgeries to make intersex children either one gender, right, male or female, to like make biological sex align with a social gender. And as we've learned from the trans community, that doesn't work. That's not true, right? So, you know, I was talking to a person, Mel Michelle, who's a brilliant Black feminist, like theorist, dope, you know, and I think right now in this moment, so much of how we think about gender relies on the fact that sex is fixed, right? Like our sexual orientation, gender identity. But what if we actually start to believe, and what if we actually threw in this wrench that sex is also fluid? What becomes possible? And I think because of intersex people, it proves to us that not only is gender fluid, but sex is fluid as well.
It's phenomenal, yeah. Wow, that is just, yeah. And you know what? I have to say that right there, that absolutely just kind of blew my mind in a sense, because I was stuck in the moment of like, for my own self, and I'm just going to hold space right now with you, because I think part of the reason why I was so excited about this webinar was to have this moment where not only within the coalition and our gender and sexuality committee that we were bringing in intersex identities and understanding intersex within the queer community, but I myself was going through kind of a transition where I was, you know, becoming more vocal about my own experience. But the idea that sex is fluid, you know, makes absolute sense, because what's so troubling about it, I think, is that the immense like sorrow or apology that people have when all of a sudden you're not in this kind of fixed way. And that was something that as a young child, that when I was 16 and these things started to happen, that people were like apologetic, they were saying sorry, they were like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to you. Now we've got to, you know, test you for all your other organs to make sure you're absolutely normal. And it really fucks with you for about, you know, through the 20s. There was a very long time where I was very depressed. I didn't know why I was depressed. I didn't know what was going on up and down, and not realizing until I became more politicized that those experiences were actually a part of the fact that I had gone through something. And I had not had an understanding of what it was. All I had was like, I'm sorry, you're not normal. I'm going to apologize to you because you're not normal. But coming back to, you know, this idea of sex not being fluid and sex being fluid and gender being fluid, I think allows us to start to really accept our bodies for however they are, and allows us to it allows us to actually start to experience our attractions and our loves and our experiences on so many different levels. And that's something else that I think, you know, when we grow up in a heteronormative kind of society, in a way where we're taught that, you know, even our sexuality is you know, to be experienced in a certain way, in a certain position, in a certain, you know, kind of manner, and things are outlawed. I think that all of a sudden it's like those fears can go away, and there can actually be that love and that healing that's necessary for us to kind of find that other world that we want. I kind of wanted to open it
Jamie,
up.
real quickly, but there was a quick question before I also forget. There's a question in the book that Saifa mentioned. Could you repeat the name of the book, Saifa?
Yeah, the name of the book is Bodies in Doubt.
Bodies.
So Bodies in Doubt, like I doubt the nature, blah, blah, blah. So D-O-U-B-T. The author is Elizabeth Rice, R-E-I-S.
R-E-I-S, okay.
And so I wanted to open it up to Umi and Sunshine, if you wanted to, you know, talk a little bit about, you know, just holding space in thinking about the things that Saifa has talked about. If you have any other comments, or just maybe we could have like a fluid conversation right now even about that.
That is so liberating. You really just freed me a lot, and just the way you just vocalized so affirmingly that, like, I feel like we're in this really interesting place in our world where we're talking, or at least in social justice, and kind of talking about gender in a type of way, but to hear you talk about sex also being fluid is very, very liberating. And you know, here I am feeling like I don't know, I'm still on that, and very appreciative of the fact that you just so fluidly and just so naturally informed us and shared that gift with us, you know. And yeah, I'll share.
Yeah, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your capacity and your knowledge. Definitely the fact that sex is fluid has stuck in my mind as well. I definitely feel like the more we can understand the fluidity of people, and the idea that like maybe we're all intersex and that we like all look different, like just being on hormone replacements, my like genitals, everything has changed. It's just like the fluidity of what we count as sex just really makes me feel really held and really appreciated and seen. Thank you for that. And I wrote down the book. I'm definitely gonna read that. Is the Elizabeth Rice, is that a Black person?
She's white.
Oh, okay, cool. Good to know.
Yeah. Yo, gotta know.
Saifa, I think you just blew everyone's mind right now.
Yeah.
Like, I knew I was gonna get some knowledge drop and some knowledge sharing, but like that one, I was kind of like, I don't even know what to say, because yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that was Mel Michelle Lewis. She's a Black feminist. She's intersex. She teaches at MICA, which is the Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore. She's brilliant. Actually, I was gonna drop a post on the Intersex Justice Project IG page with some intersex justice pedagogy that she kind of broke down. She's the one who hit me with it, you know, like always got to give love to the Black feminists who are trying to get all of us free. So yeah, I just want to give her a shout, because when she's told me that, it blew my mind. I was like, oh, I'm not the same.
I think it just absolutely floored me. It opened up so much, you know, and it opened up so much in kind of even my present day thinking of where I am in the queer community and having a community, and just the importance of bringing this conversation to the Gender and Sexuality Committee. So I'm going to shift a little bit, but I want to keep in your mind that I want to go back to policing, and I want to go back to the medical industrial complex, because as we saw, which kind of threw me off a little bit at the beginning of this Zoom call, was a lot of policing that was starting to happen, was a lot of violence that was starting to happen because people are afraid to get free. So I want to get back to that in a minute, but I wanted to shift now, and I wanted to talk with Sunshine. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Sunshine, about body autonomy. And I wanted to speak a little bit more about your work. And then there was other work that you spoke about, and I think it was kink. You mentioned something around, yeah. And I wanted to kind of dig a little bit at that and talk a little bit about body autonomy. And so please, you know, take us along for some knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna speak about body autonomy for me as a non-binary person, or just, I guess, for everyone. I feel like, body autonomy is a human right, and we should all be able to get the support that we needed for whatever surgeries or gender-affirming medicine that we should be able to take. It's definitely been a challenge for a lot of people. I know that a lot of us are very grateful for the LGBT Center in California for helping us, making it so easy for us to get our medicine. But when it comes to like different gender affirming surgeries, back to what you said earlier, Jamie, they really, like, a lot of insurance companies try to be like, this is cosmetic, this is not necessary, this is very much like, we're not paying for this, oh, we can cover like this much, but you're going to pay for everything else. So gender affirming surgeries are not accessible for a lot of people, especially Black and brown and indigenous, like trans people and intersex people. I feel like we really need that stuff so much, because it's not just for like everyone's like, it's just how you feel on the inside, but it's really for our safety. A lot of times, I know for me, it's a weird limbo that I constantly am dealing with about like the gender in between it, outside of it. I definitely feel like I look queer. I look visibly like just gender ambiguous in some way that it's not safe for me to go to a lot of different places, or I have to play a certain type of part. Like if I go to the beach or if I go to like different areas, it's so weird to have to mold yourself for other people. Because if I felt like people saw me in my gender the way that I see me in my gender, I probably wouldn't be like looking to get gender affirmative surgeries or like be on such a high dosage of HRT that I am on. I feel very much like it's an outside perspective that harms us, but it's also within the trans and intersex community. We're like the first to constantly be like, oh, you don't pass, or, oh, you're not valid because you look like this, or, oh, you don't like, and I can speak for the Black trans community specifically, like we are the first to gaslight each other and invalidate each other's experience about like who's more trans, who's more like, oh, if you're not on like testosterone or E, like you don't count. And this kind of idea that I'm constantly having in my head about what makes someone trans, like, am I more valid because I'm on HRT? And I have to like check myself constantly because that's not true. I was just as valid in my gender identity as I am today on like gender medicine. But I definitely feel kink, like bringing it back to kink, has helped me so much in feeling comfortable in my body and feeling comfortable in the way that I present and the fluidity of my gender and sex, that I feel very held in that community, specifically the pod that I have participated and created for myself. It's a beautiful cutesy BIPOC community within this like super cis het white BDSM space in Los Angeles. We have events specifically for trans people, for intersex people who can just be free, be nude, like honor your body, receive the care that you want to like receive. It's definitely been a life-changing experience for me, just being able to be nude in front of people and not be seen as like, oh, that's a this because they have this and this and this. I feel like we're all just walking around and we're like, hey, we're just these magical, fluid beings that don't have to subscribe to this heteronormative agenda. And I really love kink in the BDSM community because of the way that they hold me.
Wow. Thank you, Sunshine. Thank you so much for that. And I think that I kind of want to shift to Umi, and I want to kind of take the spirit that is kind of coming right now when we think about body autonomy, and we were speaking about John Money, and we were thinking about creating pods and spaces where our bodies, whether we are naked, whether we are clothed, whether we are, you know, however we come, you know, that how do we find that safety and how do we find that healing? And, you know, and I think that that work is so essential because we, again, live in this heteronormative patriarchal society. So much of our sexual fluidity, our gender fluidity, and I'm so excited to start using that. Like I am just feel like very liberated right now. And, but we've been harmed. You know, we've been harmed because we've been taught that we aren't right. We've been taught that we're broken, that we need to be fixed, that, you know, that we don't belong, that we have to hide ourselves, somehow to attempt to reach some kind of normative. So I wanted to kind of, you know, turn to you, Umi, and we were having a conversation about, you know, this moment and how we were going to engage. You spoke a lot about the healing justice work that Familia Trans Queer Liberation is doing. And so I felt like this is a perfect flow and a perfect transition into talking about when we live in a police state that, you know, controls our sex and our gender, or attempts to, or wants to, or creates laws to do this, we're impacted, right? But then also, we are also unlearning that culture as well. And so sometimes harms happen in between us, right? In between our communities. So can you just speak to, in the spirit and the flow of this conversation, what kind of healing justice work Trans Familia Queer Liberation is doing?
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. I'm just, this is such a beautiful conversation. I think even Sunshine, you're also taking me to a lot of places of where like the power of healing and how much of that we also bring from within. In thinking about the healing justice work at Familia, or the work that we do at Familia overall, you know, we have been describing it as like, you know, there's a variety of ways that we organize against the state, outside of the state, and also we are organizing under as the state is currently operating. So we have, you know, campaigns, active campaigns that are specifically pushing for a holding accountable of ICE and detention facilities that particularly cage and detain trans individuals and LGBTQIA people. And there's just a high number of trans people that are identified and placed in these cages specifically. We also organize for all of a sudden I was getting into how we organize against within the current parameters of the state and outside of the state. I think organizing outside of the state for us, like, you know, we've also acknowledged that we don't need the state to heal. And so to reclaim healing practices of indigenous communities or healing practices that we ourselves from our indigenous ancestors retain and or pass on, specifically for intersex, gender non-conforming trans individuals that have been through detention centers who are experiencing post-detention. We hold the Sanación en Liberación Healing Justice program. It's a series of retreat weekend gatherings facilitated by our colleague and your all's colleague, Mariela Saba. She, you know, is an incredible healer, Scorpio energy person herself, for those of you that know her. And, you know, this is a series of there's so much unpacking that comes up in these spaces, a lot that ripples for people, conversations regarding our identities, people's migration, experiences of detention and post-detention. You know, we do a variety of things by grounding ourselves on, like, every day is dedicated to an element, to grounding ourselves with the earth-like element, a day of water, a day of fire where we engage in activism. It is so divine, like a lot of things that have come up, including conversations of people being intersex and actually when problematic moments of still gendering each other to pass as binary as possible, and the amount of the many different languages that, you know, that has taken place has been very magical as well. And the fact that, you know, Mariela herself, she's very very intentionally also bringing in the work of Black liberation, queer and trans individuals, people that have contributed to healing justice, to the concepts of abolition. You know, these are not concepts that we at Familia have come up with, or that any Latinx community has come up with. And so, yeah, I think our healing justice has been very important. I think it's one of our more intimate spaces. I think it's one where I think trans and intersex people get to share more, like, you know, about how much more of their true self they've been able to be. And I think these are also the people that we end up rolling with, people that have experienced this kind of detention and migration, that we just dedicate more of our time of human interaction and connecting with. And so it's also the community who has really repped and held down the grassroots action, you know, holding the ground on making sure that essentially the assassinations of trans, intersex, and queer people in detention don't go unacknowledged. And all of the grassroots actions that we've had in the last 2 years in a row have been led by gender variant trans and GNC migrant individuals that have been through detention. And so I think also there's many things that I think due to healing justice that takes place, there's a lot of unpacking of anti-Blackness. There's a lot of unpacking of degrading Indigenous, our connection with the lands and being Indigenous. And so I think healing does that. I think there's something very magical that happens with actively healing with these kind of healers in our community, people that are so powerful like Mariela, and that more toxicities, there's room that we start holding so we can, unlearn things that we need to and address other toxic things that we need to get rid of. And I feel like for me that, the healing justice work has been the most powerful. So I think that's really one of the components where we don't need the state to heal. And oftentimes we are healing from violence inflicted by state-sanctioned violence. Our direct action work is also a part of that, helped by community. And so, I'll share a little bit about that. Sorry to be all over the place, but essentially healing justice, that's one of the ways that it looks like for us.
Yeah, that's great. Like, we keep ourselves safe, we heal each other, because the state has been definitely the perpetrator of violence, the perpetrator of control, containing, and criminalizing our people. So I wanted to kind of build from where you're at and speaking about how we've had to basically who is on the front lines, who is fighting back these detention centers. And I wanted to ask Saifa if you could also speak about who is on the front line of intersex justice, and how is Interact showing up, and what are they highlighting for us to know that is necessary for us right now to be aware of. You've mentioned some people that are currently still practicing that were descendants of John Money, or tutelages of John Money, or studied under John Money is what I'm trying to say. But I've seen that there's other hospitals also that we need to be very aware of as well.
Yeah, I just want to give just send love across the Zoom to Sunshine, my sibling Sunshine, because I think what they brought up is just so real. When we talk about the medical establishment and policing, about how trans people, there's just such an onslaught of attack against trans people right now. Like in so many ways, like Black trans women, just really this government really trying to strip away the rights of trans people. And one of the ways it happens is in healthcare, right? And it's so interesting about how medical insurance companies use this language around surgeries that are cosmetic, right, and medically unnecessary. And what happens to intersex people is that we get these treatments, these surgeries that are cosmetic and medically unnecessary, that we often don't get a chance to consent to, but yet trans people want these surgeries that they will consent to. It's just so bizarre, and it's just so mind-boggling. And so I think I just want to highlight that as this really a point of just for people who are cis, for people who are not trans, who are non-intersex, just to see like how these systems are set up to pit groups against each other, but also to really disenfranchise people, to cause trauma in both communities, So I think right now, the main intersex organizations in the United States right now in this moment are Interact, which is a legal advocacy organization that advocates for intersex youth, the Houston Intersex Society based in Houston, Texas, the Intersex Justice Project, which I'm a part of, as well as the Intersex Campaign for Equality. And those are like 4 intersex organizations. And I feel like probably the most well-funded organization in the US right now, and perhaps in the world, because there isn't a lot of funding for intersex organizations, period, but would be Interact. And Interact, they were able to pass a Senate resolution in California, which was almost like a suggestion to doctors not to do these surgeries on kids. And when they tried to actually pass a bill, it was switched out of the health committee into like a business committee. I forgot the exact committee, but it was a business committee. And that's where it died, you know? And so right now, at this moment, there isn't any comprehensive protections for intersex children, right? And so I think we're all, you know, I'm interested in having like a comprehensive strategy, right? Because I think about like the abolition movement. It's interesting, like this conversation around defunding the police, abolition is so all the rage right now, right? Because this builds on work that has been happening for decades, right? This is not new. This has been happening for decades, right? And we're starting to see some of like, you know, like the ending of cash bail and getting police out of schools. We're seeing that, right? And so I think, you know, I'm interested as an activist to build a comprehensive strategy that is beyond us, that is beyond me. I may not live to see it implemented, but I think right now what we need in the US in this context is a comprehensive strategy to really attack this in the medical establishment from all directions. You know, we need to get the insurance companies, we need to get these legislators, we need to get these doctors who are perpetrators of very violent actions, right? Because just like the police, the doctors are not held accountable. There are doctors who are rapists, trigger warning. There are doctors who are racist, who are transphobic. Like, I think we need to really, I think we put so much trust in doctors and we don't question, you know, who they are and what they do. And I think we need to start questioning. And I think that's why intersex activism is so important.
Oh, yeah. Right on. Definitely. You know, being a nurse and being in the hospital and listening to doctors, actually listening to how they act. And for example, now that I am working on a COVID unit, it's like the othering that, you know, now is happening around COVID patients. It's like, oh, what did you do to get stuck down here? How are you here with them? And so, and it's, you know, it's interesting because that's the way it starts, and, you know, the racism, the sexism, and then the transphobia, and you wonder, you know, and they're able to run their mouths in the middle of the station saying hateful, harmful things. And, you know, all of a sudden you have to distract yourself from taking care of somebody and actually reprimand and get someone to shut up because they're saying something. But then, you know, where do you go from there? And then you get caught up in a complaint for HR, and then that goes nowhere. And then you know, all your energy gets, you know, fighting a single doctor, which is interesting because even within the medical field, it's like playing, it ends up becoming like, now what's going to happen when I need to engage this doctor again? How are they going to, you know, treat me as a nurse when I need to get certain things done? And so it's very political. So it's very, I mean, I completely appreciate what you're saying. And I think that is very, it's very significant and very much needs to be a comprehensive strategy. Yes, definitely. That's another one. Saifa, you're blowing my mind today. I'm telling you, sometimes you say some things and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna sit with that one too. But everybody, really, I think this has been such a really powerful conversation. And I wanted to switch to Sunshine kind of on the same mode of talking about police, talking about how, you know, a good friend told me that hospitals are cops, you know, doctors are, you know, we just spoke about how the kind of violence that physicians can enact without any kind of accountability, without any kind of justice to people that they have harmed. I wanted to ask you, Sunshine, with everything that you've shared with us, I wanted to find out, you know, what was it about the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition, and what did you see about surveillance, spying, surveillance, infiltration, and the need to kind of become a part of this fight? I definitely see you diving in a lot of different areas within the coalition. So I wanted to kind of find out what about that has drawn you to the work around policing.
Yeah, I want to go back to some things that Saifa said, if that's all right.
Of course.
I like doctors, the pharmaceuticals, insurance companies, they're all uplifting the same things that police are uplifting, and it's to keep the cis heteronormative agenda, to keep brown and black and indigenous folks in their place, to keep like us in this gender binary, and so they can pick and choose who they want to do these cosmetic surgeries on so that they can control us. That's always like the police agenda it's seeped in every single thing that we do, and it sucks because these are the places we have to go through to feel our most comfortable, to like be in a space where we can be our best selves. And like just going to the doctor in general for a lot of trans and intersex people is triggering, because like maybe your dead name is on something, like your like assigned sex at birth is on something, and then you're constantly just like, I don't go to the doctors. I don't go to the doctor because it's so triggering to have to like hear your dead name all the time, be like misgendered all the time, and then these people don't really care about any of the things that I'm going through. A lot of like people that do, like a lot of doctors and surgeons that do top surgery do not care. Like they're just in it to like snip, 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 let me get my money. Like I really like this isn't for it to look good. Like y'all wanted this, it's not necessary. But they wouldn't do the same thing for cis people. Their cosmetic surgeries look amazing. It's just, it's all, I would love to go into that and make like, and just like connect people so we can start attacking this, because people don't really see this happening, especially cis people. Like when they go to the doctor, their immediate attention is like, I'm gonna get care today. I'm gonna be held today. I'm gonna get care. I'm gonna get what I need, or I'm gonna have to wait a few hours. No, but when we go in there, it's like, shit, are they even gonna hear me? Are they even gonna wanna work on me? Has there been a new law that passed so that they can turn me away? Like, it's just a constant, like, they want us to feel this way for a reason, and so that we can stay in our place and not make a fuss about it. So I'm down to connect and to make that fuss and to like hold these people accountable, because it's very like, you're right, everyone's all about this like defund the police right now. Let's start talking about defunding the whole entire system and holding the whole entire system accountable for every policing that they do in every single system. Because once they defund the police, that money's going to go to these places that are still like treating these marginalized people bad, that are still like harming us in the most like harmful ways possible, like actually doing physical things to us that we don't consent to, or we consent to. Yeah, so that's a big conversation that I'd love to have. Yeah. Just taking a breath after that.
No, that's Umi, did you want to say anything about all this as well?
Yeah, I think to both of your points, Sunshine and Saifa, and I think also Saifa mentioning, that abolitionist movements, this isn't new, it's been happening for some decades. I like where all of that work before us to this moment that we're in now, the fact that there is a conversation about defunding, and other things have been happening also with like the loss of Ms. Guillen in the military industrial complex, and how and also specifically what's happening in Minneapolis. There's the Black Visions Collective, and so this is Black, queer, trans, very Black, plural-led movement building that is also yet again paving way for many more of us and many more social justice conversations. So along with defunding the police and work that's been around abolition of prisons, the trickling of abolishing of ICE, I like of more of where we're going with addressing other state sanctioned violence, the medical industrial complex, like you all have been talking about, and those roots and those connections, and then also the military industrial complex. And I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it because I feel like, you know, to Saifa's point, like what is also the intersex perspective and deliberate, you know, like there's something that you were telling us there for me, Saifa, like that I'm all of us, like I want to be here for that and want to be like, yes, social justice world, yes, world, how can we and where are we going to be at to hear that? Because there's more connections that our intersex community has been making for us. And so yeah.
I'm so happy about this conversation, y'all.
Yes, it's lit.
This is so needed.
Yeah, go ahead, Sunshine, take it away.
I wanted to answer your question about
of course, yeah.
about what led me to the coalition, and it plays into everything that we've been saying. Just over the years, seeing moving my activism into art so that I'm not like constantly draining myself and losing my voice, especially as a Black, queer, trans person. Like in the past, like they were like, shh, it's shh for a second. I like using my art, and then also just thinking about like the importance that art is and like film media is to tell stories and to like make it more accessible for everyone. I spent 2 years teaching kids screenwriting and letting them put their shows on, and it was such a like great experience for them to have this outlet. But also on the same side of like art and like social media and like video platforms are really great, but they also have been harming us so much. Like when people go into protests and they're taking photos of all these people, and even if they like, you know, blur the face, people can unblur. Like the metadata is still there, and it kills and murders people. Like watching what happened to all the Ferguson protesters that were like their pictures were taken and then they mysteriously like disappeared or were murdered or lynched. I'm like, it's because these people are working with the police, maybe knowingly or maybe unknowingly. And there's this just stalker state in every single like section of our lives, like social media, our school, like where we buy food, where we live, all this different stuff is all monitored and all just surveyed so that we're not stepping out of line. And the more that the police get this surveillance technology, the more it can be undercover. Like, oh, we're listening to y'all. We're not hiring more police officers, even though we are hiring way more police officers to use this like police surveillance, but you just won't see us as much. I feel is even more harmful because everyone can access this technology. Everyone can we're all in the system, like with our phones and the facial recognition with our phones. Instagram actively works with the police. These what's it called? What's that? The ring that people use on their homes. They actively work with the police. Like all of these different things that make us feel safe are just outlets for the police to have access to what we're doing, who we're doing it with, and what we're talking about. So I felt very stuck for a bit about what I could do other than like helping filmmakers, editing people's films, making my own films, writing. Like what can I do that's more than just that? And I answered that by saying like, well, you need to help cut off the biggest leg that's helping white supremacy thrive in this country. And that is like, it's the government, but like within that, it's also the police force. And I came to stop LAPD spying after the raid that happened earlier this year at one of those underground events. where a lot of people were, not a lot of people, but 2 people were arrested. A lot of people, like a lot of stuff was happening and we just didn't know our rights. We were all queer, like just brown, Black, Indigenous artists that we were like, we're doing activist work through our art, but we should also know our own rights and like what we can do and how we can like not only use our artistic voice to educate people who wouldn't just read articles and stuff, but to really understand the system so that we're actually dismantling what we want to be dismantling.
Mm.
Yeah, like how everyone's really happy about them taking away $100-something million from the police budget, but like that's not like how those wins could be for people who don't have the who have the knowledge or the language that they're using, to see that that's not, that might not even be a real win, to like actually know the system so that we can dismantle it and build our own pillars of like community-based systems. So Stop LAPD spying, like ever since that first meeting, I was like, okay, I'm here for it. Like, this is what I want to get into. This is what I want to learn about. And then COVID happened and it pushed me more into it because I could go on my phone. And so I have been like going into different like layers of it just because I'm so interested in everything that the coalition is doing, and learning the language about what's going on, actually being able to not just read these articles and be like, I wonder what all of this means, but to actually know the knowledge firsthand and to use it in my everyday life and to like be able to really, really comprehend what I'm saying when I'm saying dismantle this system.
Yeah, right on. Definitely need to know your fight so that you know what you're dismantling, and we can dismantle and we can dismantle and we can dismantle, and we keep doing it brick by brick. I appreciate you bringing up kind of your experience with the coalition, you know, what led you to it, and kind of your analysis, which you know, I'm hearing it now, and I'm really, really appreciating. And Umi, I was wondering if you wanted to maybe even respond or kind of build with Sunshine right now and talking about the work that Familia Trans Queer Liberation is doing with the detention centers, and how, you know, are we going about dismantling the detention centers, and how are we going about also fighting the policing of movement across borders?
Thank you so much for that. You know, we have, for one of the first times to move our organizing strategy, we have a national leadership table. This is called Jotas versus ICE. And for us, like people that are directly impacted, you know, they're migrants and TGNC individuals. We've been really driving the End Trans Detention campaign. In 2017, when Familia successfully ran the campaign in Santa Ana to close down a detention jail facility that had a lot of LGBT community people, that closed down. But then ICE decided, Homeland Security rather, to write a memo on how to incarcerate or hold trans individuals, and so that. That led to the creation specifically of like facilities that will specifically hold trans folks in Cibola over in New Mexico. Since then, since 2017, there's been a total of 3 deaths of trans individuals that we know of due to neglect of detention facilities and guards and things like demanding and, you know, attention to their health, but that was disregarded. And so they've been under investigation, and that prompted ICE to early this year, all of a sudden during their investigation, to transfer all trans GNC individuals. There's over 120 some trans individuals that ICE knows of that has transferred to many different facilities. And so we've been just, before COVID, we were addressing that and addressing the release of trans individuals, and the fact that, you know, ICE doesn't really care for really anybody in making sure that people, essentially really what we know is that trans people, intersex people, GNC people run a higher risk. All these oppressions that we face once you're in detention, the oppression there is just magnified extremely. And so in making those cases with our coalition partners, the Transgender Law Center, their litigation team is also pushing for, it's the Justice for Roxana campaign to hold people accountable in those detention facilities. They're pushing for a lawsuit specifically to release all trans and GNC individuals from detention right now during COVID times. And it's really tricky, and it really speaks to how much all of these systems that are in place really do need to get abolished eventually one day, and that as a goal, because all of these individuals that are individuals themselves that uphold cis heteronormativity in such extreme ways, even when a very deliberate lawsuit to protect people based on gender, you know, there's responses that the judges have had to the case, and it's really riddled again with like very basic mediocre transphobia. And so it speaks to where we're at. And so it speaks to the fact that we really do need to keep talking about abolition, to keep centering the voices of Black abolitionists, and so grateful that we get to hear of intersex Black abolitionists. And specifically, you know, I think you all were mentioning the words of, I think, Anika Earhart. Oh no, I'm so sorry. I'm misquoting. But specifically to Nell Michelle Lewis and you know, activists and people that we should keep centering to learn from, because any kind of, I don't know, just more aligning with around abolition, I think, can get us to a time where we're really talking about more than just, you know, just the police state and more than just ICE, because obviously court systems don't care to uphold justice for intersex individuals, for people beyond any of the identities that we already know. This case right now proves it, and it's specifically for trans people. And so, yeah, there's still a lot of work ahead, and that's some of the work that we're focused on right now. And, you know, we continue just aligning with what's important and being led by many important leaders right now. So yeah, I'll share some of that.
Jamie, there's a couple comments. Do you want to?
Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and open it up to see what questions or comments folks have.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thank you. This has been an incredibly powerful and very inspiring conversation, and much, much appreciate for honoring the space of the coalition with this conversation. There's a comment from Fatima Shabazz where they're saying, I'm a proponent of my space being any place I choose it to be. And then they go on to say that I have maintained that I'm bold enough to break the rules and strong enough to make my own. And oops, shoots, I'm so sorry, Fatima. Fatima, if I unmute you, would you mind just sharing that in your own voice? So go ahead and unmute yourself. Yeah, you may have to, yeah, go ahead and unmute. Yeah, go ahead.
My mouse is on the other side of the room almost. Well, my name is Fatima Malika Shabazz. I am the president and CEO of Fatima Speaks LLC. Basically, what I do is cultural competency and sensitivity trainings, a lot of motivational speaking, panels, things of that nature. So I just kind of wanted to go to this whole thing about being in a particular space and being uncomfortable being in that space, because people in that space make you feel uncomfortable. I'm 58 years old. For many, many years of my life, I had that same idea. At places that I went, you know, people would follow you, they would watch you, they would try to see what you're doing. But see, that's the problem that we have as Black people anyway. That's kind of indicative of us as just being Black people in this country, and especially when I identified as a Black male. But there was a point when I had to say to myself, wherever I go, wherever I plant my feet, I intend to be and I will be Queen of the Jungle, hands down. So in this day and age, considering the life that we are living in and the world that we are living right now, wherever I plant my feet, and that space is the space that I feel like I belong. So the people in that space will respect that space. They will respect me being in that space, right? And I will maintain that this is what it is. So if you don't like that, then you can move on to go do something else. You can be someplace else. You can be any place but trying to invade my space. In terms of how I maintain my life and my world, like I said, I've always maintained that I'm bold enough to break the rules and strong enough to make my own. But I have an understanding that once you speak in a loud voice and say that you are dissatisfied with something, you become a leader. The leader isn't necessarily the person that says, I am the leader. The leader is the person that says, I'm not going for this anymore. So once you speak out and say, I'm not having this, we're not doing this anymore, we've done this for 500 years, 300 years, however long, since 1619, we're not doing this anymore. Since Stonewall, we're not doing this anymore. Once you place that cloak of leadership on your shoulders, you have to recognize that your adversaries will paint you with a target, right? Leadership requires sacrifice. So if you're unwilling to make the sacrifice and don't take the leadership position, I'm not saying don't speak up for yourself or anything of that nature. I want everyone in our community to have a voice, to say what needs to be said, when it needs to be said, and any way that you choose to say it. I just had some controversy with an associate because I spoke at a rally in Long Beach a few days ago, like a week ago, and they didn't particularly like my language. Well, I tailored my language for the particular crowd that was there. So either you accept the language or you don't accept the language. I mean, I could have said everything that I said with an immaculate King's English, and someone still would not have liked it or disagreed, or I don't care. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we as a community should stand together when we need to stand together. But if we have to stand individually, make sure that you be strong about your stance. Always be strong about your stance. Being strong sometimes means that your adversary will attack you. Be prepared to be attacked, all of the time.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you. So sorry, but just going to open it up for other folks as well. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. There was also a question from, I think they may have left somebody named Muhammad, and they said they were from Pakistan. They were a hijra, and they wanted to speak about the hijra identity as well from Pakistan. But I guess they may have. I can't find them anymore. So, Muhammad, if you're still there, just please go ahead and just raise your hand, or just to let us know. Okay, so I've also posted, Jamie, the donation information for Saifa, Umi, and Sunshine for their Venmo, and also the Cash App, and also for folks, and also the organizational information. So if folks want to just now, we'll open it up for questions. Jamie, do you want to just, because do you think we should unmute all, or what do you think?
No, I don't think we should, but okay. I just want to give folks on the panel, just if there's anything else that you wanted to just say to kind of wrap up in regards to this kind of experience that we had and different questions we had, and then we'll kind of open it up to see if there's any other questions or comments that folks have on Zoom.
Oh, but I wanted to give us. Go ahead, finish. My apologies. Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to give us time to be able to also close our conversation together. So did you say Mohammed is back?
No. I guess somebody just mentioned that they only see Umi's, but it's if you scroll up, there's also Sunshine's and Saifa's Venmo and Cash App information. I just wanted to remind folks about that they're posted in the chat for everyone.
Cool. So whoever wants to start, just we've been kind of on a long ride with each other. I know, Saifa, it's late on your end. And I really appreciate you hanging in there with us the whole time, and just you said a lot of stuff that I think was very, inspirational and kind of just blew the minds. So I really appreciate it. So anything you want to wrap up with us and your experience with the Stop LAPD Spying Coalition?
Yeah, I mean, I think thank you for inviting me, Jamie. Yeah, thank you so much for reaching out. I think all of these issues are interconnected. I think, when we think about state violence, it's not just the police. I think we have to think about these institutions that are rooted in white supremacy, and that are meant to detain and execute Black and Indigenous, and migrant communities and undocumented folks and really marginalized folks. So I think when we are confronting state violence, we have to do it at all levels. I think 2020, and I think the COVID is reminding us that all of us can't be out in the street. This is the disability justice piece. Not all of us can be out in the street. I think it really requires us to really turn up in the lanes that we're in, and really get your folks and really start having those conversations. Because I just feel like, with the number of disparities from COVID, and just having the president in office that we do, whether we have Trump or whether we have Biden, it doesn't matter. Like, the state is not working for our well-being. There's a fundamental breakdown in what will keep us safe, So yeah, I think I would just encourage people to think really broadly about state violence and how it shows up in healthcare, how it shows up in policing, how it shows up in schools, colleges, universities. I think it really requires us to really do that work on all levels.
Yeah, thank you. Definitely. Whew, we got work. Sunshine, I wanted to, pass to you. Any kind of, summing up thoughts, and just, we've been definitely had a deep conversation. So where are you at?
So I just want to say thank you so much for creating and facilitating this space for us all to talk. This conversation has really just felt so necessary to have. I want to, everything that Saifa said just now, to please remember all of that, but also remember, like, for cis people in general, if you don't have any like trans or intersex friends, or you do and you're constantly asking them for labor to explain things, to teach you about things, to like teach you what's going on, like rethink about asking us for that labor, because we have to go through so much just stepping outside, like in COVID times, wearing masks. Like, that's not safe for us to wear masks, because a lot of us, like, we're either misgendered or like a lot, like, or just different things. I've dealt with a lot of violent, like, like a lot of like dangerous situations just being in COVID, wearing a mask and stepping outside looking the way that I do. This is definitely a continuous conversation, and I feel very, very excited for it. For everyone who participated in this conversation, I give thanks. I give thanks for everyone who witnessed this conversation. And a reminder that, like, Umi reminded me to say this, and I didn't find the right space to say this, but like, we all learn from this earth, and we all are connected to this earth, and the earth is queer. The earth is intersex. The earth is trans. Like, there is so many different creatures of this earth who change their sex and who are sexually fluid. There are so many creatures in this earth that are queer, that I feel trans and intersex folks are just so out of this matrix that we're like, hey, we're fluid as fuck, like, come join us, or just like come witness us do our fluid dance. And I feel really just, I'm so happy after this conversation to have more community members, to have this open dialogue, especially for intersex community members, because giving y'all the mic, like, y'all really deserve this mic and always have deserved this mic. And I feel like in this time specifically, I really appreciate y'all speaking up and like telling us how we can best hold you better, how you feel being included in this community. And I'm just really grateful for y'all.
Thank you, Sunshine. And Umi, just to sum things up in your mind and your experience today, and I thank you so much for taking the time to spend with the coalition and with Sunshine and Saifa.
Absolutely. I think I think our co-panelists said it very well too, and definitely echo a lot of their guidance and closing remarks. I'm very grateful to you all and what you all do. I know about the LA Spy Coalition through Mariela, who's a colleague, and and it's just so wonderful to even hear, you know, trans GNC folks of color over here in Portland, that are also abolitionists talk about the work that y'all are doing over there and referencing you all very much. So it's finally so wonderful to be in space with you all in this forum. So thank you for holding it down.
Thank you too. So I just want to turn it back to our folks. If there's any last questions or thoughts or comments, it's getting late for our panelists. So I do want to thank them and send everybody home safe and warm and hopefully fed and relaxed. But I just want to give it one last shot to see if there's any other questions or comments. Okay. All right. So
can we just let folks know about next Tuesday and all?
oh, go ahead, Mohammed.
Okay. So sorry, Saifa, just maybe a couple more minutes, but so next Tuesday, which is the 14th, it's our second Tuesday of the month, would be our webinar on the war on youth. And of course, a lot of stuff is happening around defunding of school policing, but yet at the same time, the massive assault that is taking place on youth and how youth are being criminalized under the guise of this national security language of radicalization and violent extremism, and how the whole notion of gang injunctions and gang databases has taken on a whole new significance as well. So watch out for that. And then also next week on Thursday, the 16th, we are also starting a series, not every Thursday, because we're doing the stuff every Tuesday, but maybe every second Thursday or so. We're going to start doing, a lot of folks have asked us to do Surveillance 101, and to bring that whole universe back and to open it up. And in that, what we want to do is to kind of create sort of a reading circle as well about some of the reports that the coalition has published. So look out for the first report that we ever released was about 7-8 years ago. This was a people's audit of the suspicious activity reporting program, which is has one of the most significant programs which has become a template and a foundation of how policing has sort of reconfigured itself. In that we'd be looking at, and you may have seen these programs like See Something, Say Something, and just a whole lot of that. It shifted policing into behavioral surveillance and really legitimizing hunch-based policing. So what we want to do is in that to have a reading so people come in, and we'll open up, we'll work with the chat room, with the breakout rooms, where people can discuss what they read, come back, and how do we start strategizing, how do we start building power. Because what we also want to do is to really start lifting this thing that while, and I say that with like a little bit of a sigh about defunding this whole thing, it's about abolition. It's about dismantling. And just as Sci-Fi and everybody else has said, that it's about abolition of policing, not just the police in uniform. So it's about policing of our bodies in so many different forms. But yet at the same time, as we see in LA, that, monies may have been, which interestingly enough, the money was reduced out of the increase that was going to go to the police. So I don't know what sort of defunding are we, but it is there. Of course, there's a lot of significance, there's a lot of symbolism, and there's not a lot of value to it. But a lot of tools of harm remain. A lot of things that trace and track and monitor day to day, from Stingray to license plate readers to facial recognition to body cameras to a whole slew of things. So we want to really start building that power. We want to just mobilize. We want to just demand that those should be immediately dismantled. So just keep an eye out. Next week is going to be busy. And also just our third zine is going to be coming out in about 2 weeks as well. And I want to honor the work of a lot of folks around Isaac and Sunshine and Jamie and several other folks who may not be on the screen right now, who are really putting this dope-ass zine. The second one was a war on youth. First one was this is going to be on public health and contact tracing and various other types of how public health is the tip of the knife of policing. So a lot happening. So again, so that was it for me, Jamie. Thank you all very much, and I'm going to pass it out to you for closing.
Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. That's pretty much it. Again, I want to thank Saifa, Sunshine, and Umi for being here, for having this really amazing conversation. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out, and come back and see us again next Tuesday. Have a good night.
Be safe,
good night,
be
everyone.
healthy, and thank you.